And good morning, everyone. Welcoming you to another edition of Game Time with Kenny. Game Time with Kenny is back in the house, and we're ready to rock and roll today. Uh, we do want to apologize, though. We wanted to go ahead and cover the day in sports history. What happened on today's date, on the 16th of May, but due to some technical difficulties today. The information was not able to come up, so we are not going to be able to cover that on today's program. Uh, but in a future program, we will get everybody up to date, starting from January 1st all the way up to the present day, uh, for uh, what happened in sports history. So those programs are upcoming, and we do apologize, like I said, for any technical difficulties on that. Uh, But let's go into the NBA playoffs. We were talking about the Raptors and the Bucks. The Bucks have the best record in all of basketball. They're the one team that I believe stands in the way of the Golden State Warriors not winning a title. And I believe that the Golden State Warriors and the Milwaukee Bucks will play for the NBA title this year. I kind of like to see Toronto go there, but I think Milwaukee is just going to be a little bit too much. So it's going to be a Giannis battle against, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. But who does the Warriors have that they could guard Giannis? Well, I'll tell you, Iguodala would be one that I believe that could be a good matchup against him, uh, to kind of try to slow him down. But that's going to be the key to the series. Is if the Warriors play the Bucks, they have to slow down Giannis. They cannot let him get penetration through the paint, get easy dunks, and anything like that. They're going to have to limit him going to the free throw line. Um, and they're going to have him shoot the fadeaway jumpers from maybe about the free throw line and beyond the free throw line, um, for their series of the Warriors and Bucks if the two play against each other. So, what happened in yesterday's game? Well, let's look at the scoring and everything that took place yesterday. Well, Kawhi Leonard and Giannis. Everybody expected a great battle between them, and they battled it out. Kawhi led Toronto with 31 points. Lowry had 30. They combined for 61 points between the two yesterday. Siakam had 15, and Gasol and Green both had 6 out of the starting 5. Off the bench, they got Powell to lead the way with 6, Ibaka with 4, and Van Vliet with 2. As far as the Milwaukee Bucks, well, Giannis had 24, but they were led by Lopez, who had 29. I mean, he was just unstoppable in yesterday's game, and they're going to have to come up with a game plan to try to slow him down, along with Giannis. Those are going to be the two main guys for the Milwaukee Bucks, that the Toronto Raptors have to do a better job of it in game 2 if they're going to go ahead and win game 2 and then get the home court and then try to win games 3 and 4 up in Toronto. The way the Raptors are going to win this series, if they're going to pull off the upset, they have to get the split in Milwaukee. They cannot go down 2-0 in the series trying to go back home and win 2. They've got to get the split in game 2 tomorrow night. Again, the Eastern Conference Finals games will be on TNT. The Western Conference will be on ESPN. The Western Conference will resume tonight with game 2. So like I said, Lopez and Giannis, they led the way with 29 and 24. They scored 53 of the Bucks' 108 points yesterday in the 108-100 victory over Toronto. Mirotic had 13, Middleton had 11, and Bledsoe had 9. They were led off the bench by Brogdon with 15, and Silva, who had 7. So the Bucks bench outscored the Toronto bench 22-12. So that is something they're going to have to definitely change if they're going to win game number 2. Well, what about the Warriors? I mean, what can you say about them? They come out in game 1. They get 36 from Steph Curry. He hits 9 3-pointers. Damian Lillard, an off game, did not have his best game. Some say that could be due to an emotional Game 7 victory in Denver. They could have an emotional letdown, and they just didn't have the energy because they flew from Denver all the way to Oakland to play that first game. And plus, they didn't have that much time to rest, where the Warriors had that extra rest. So the extra rest proves that it was well worth it. So what do they have to do in game 2? Well, if I'm the Portland Trailblazers, I would sit Aminu down. He was pretty much a non-factor in the first game, and I just don't see him really producing that much in this series against the Golden State Warriors. So I would sit him down. I would put Harkless in there, who can play the defense, and then he can provide the offense on his own. So if I'm the Trailblazers, and if I'm the coaching staff for them, I would do that. But I'll tell you, it's going to be a long series because the Trailblazers just cannot simply match up against the Warriors. The Warriors' biggest test is going to come if it's a Warriors-Bucks NBA Finals matchup, because the Warriors would have to go to Milwaukee for the first 2. They will not have the home court. That is the only team they fear of playing in this year's playoffs. Is the one team that I believe that could stand in the way of them winning a 4th NBA title in 5 years. Milwaukee, a lot of people say, is going to win it all this year. They could win it. And each team, the Warriors and the Bucks, only need to win 7 more games to win the NBA title. Which one is going to win 7 more to do it? Will it be the Warriors or will it be the Bucks? But don't count the Trailblazers out yet. Even though they don't have really the offense needed against them, they could still pose a little bit of a threat, and they could make things a little bit interesting. But I just don't think they have the manpower to sustain against the Warriors in a 7-game series. And I think in a time, they're going to end up getting defeated by the Warriors. All right, let's go to the NHL. Well, when we go to this, the Sharks, the Blues, they go to game 3. You know, what I want to see in the Stanley Cup final this year, I want it to be the Boston Bruins and the San Jose Sharks going at it. If that's going to take place, the Sharks need to win at least 1 game out of the 2 between games 3 and 4 in St. Louis. It would be better if they could win both games, because if they lost both of them, they would be in real serious trouble against the St. Louis Blues. And then you're asking yourselves, you have to win the last 3 games, with 2 of them being in St. Louis, to go to the Stanley Cup final, which is a tall order against the Blues. So what would happen in this game last night? Well, the Blues, they had their goals come in the second period. Second period only. The first period and the third period, they did not score. Would the game go to overtime, or would it only end in the third period? Well, San Jose, after the first 20 minutes, was up 2-0. Then they also had a 2-goal lead in the second period. They were up 3-1. So here's what happened. After they were up 3-1, the Blues actually scored 3 more goals in the second period. And they went into the locker room after 40 minutes, up 4-3. So this is what took place late in the third period in St. Louis. And let's see what happens when they when the Blues and the Sharks. What happened late in the third period? We're going to show you that right now. Just give us a minute as the video uploads for that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that is how the game ended in St. Louis. 59 seconds to go in the third period. Logan Couture gets the game-tying goal. And then you saw in overtime, 14:37 to go in the overtime. 5 minutes and 23 seconds into the extra period in overtime, Karlsson gets the game-winning goal. So the Sharks steal game 3 over the Blues, overcoming their 2-goal leads that they had. And they were down by 1, 4-3, before that goal in the third period. So the Blues suffer an overtime loss at home. Now they've got to try to come up with a way to get that split at home and to make it a best of 2 out of 3. The Sharks' mindset is say, okay, let's win 2 more games, and then we'll be done. The Eastern Conference will resume tonight when the Boston Bruins go into Carolina to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. And that coverage will begin at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon for those of you in the Hawaiian Standard Time Zone. If the Boston Bruins win tonight, they will have swept the Carolina Hurricanes. Now here, figure the odds. Carolina goes into Washington, gets an overtime goal in the first round of the playoffs, and they beat the Washington Capitals 4-3 in the overtime. And they win 4-3. Then in round 2, they face the New York Islanders. Now figure this. How often does it happen in NHL history where the first round teams that played against each other, New York Islanders, they get swept. They swept the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round. Then the New York Islanders get swept by the Carolina Hurricanes in round 2. But here, Carolina, in their first round, wins, as we said, in Washington against the Capitals, 4-3 in overtime. Then, in the second round, Carolina, they sweep the New York Islanders in 4 games. After the Islanders swept Pittsburgh in the first round, they get swept in the second round in Carolina. So, here's what happens in this series. So Carolina, they sweep the New York Islanders. They're on the verge of being swept tonight. If the Boston Bruins win tonight's game, the Carolina Hurricanes, after sweeping the New York Islanders in round 2, will have been swept by the Boston Bruins. It is interesting in NHL history. Has there ever been a time when 2 teams could possibly get swept in 2 rounds in the playoffs? The 2 teams that are playing against each other swept their previous opponents, but then their next opponent could sweep them. Interesting scenario, but that is definitely a possibility that exists tonight. So what do the Carolina Hurricanes have to do in order to avoid that sweep? Well, I'll tell you who's been a forcing for the Bruins this year in the playoffs has been Patrice Bergeron. You got to slow him down. You got to slow the Bruins down when they come through the neutral ice. Don't let them get that real great speed of skaters that they got and then have them have puck possession in your own zone for maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And then you get worn out. And then by the time you're ready to go ahead and start something on your own offense, then you're just going to have to dump the puck in because you got to get a line change. You're going to have to slow them down. Will Carolina be able to do that in Game 4? We're going to find out tonight, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and 2 p.m. for those of you in the Hawaiian Standard Time Zone. And Mike Emrick will be at the call of that game in Carolina tonight. And Kenny Albert will do the play-by-play for the St. Louis Blues and the San Jose Sharks as they play Game 4 in St. Louis tomorrow. Well, we know there's going to be at least 5 games in that series. So Sunday will be game number 5 in San Jose, back in the Shark Tank. But will there be a game 6 or will there be only 5? Well, we're going to find out tomorrow night when they play game number 4 in St. Louis. What do the Blues have to say about what happened yesterday? All right, let's quickly go through Major League Baseball. And the Major League Baseball scoreboard, we're just only going to go through a few of those games. But one of the best games was in Minnesota when the Minnesota Twins beat um, the LA Angels 8-7, or the Anaheim Angels, now as they call it there. Other great games: Cincinnati beats the Chicago Cubs in 10 innings at home, 6-5. San Francisco defeats Toronto at home, 4-3. The Boston Red Sox get a 6-5 victory over Colorado at home. And a couple other scores to pass along. Tampa Bay in the Battle of Florida goes down to Miami and beats the Miami Marlins 1-0. And in the Battle of Southern California, the LA Dodgers at home defeat the San Diego Padres 2-0. For the rest of the scores, you can go to ESPN.com or go to FoxSports.com, your favorite sports website, and you'll get all the latest on what all the scores happened in yesterday's Major League Baseball games. When we look at the schedule for today, probably one of the best games that is going to be out there today will be the Minnesota Twins and the Seattle Mariners as they begin a 4-game set in Seattle. The Mariners, after that 10-game road trip, it was a dismal 10-game road trip. They are actually 1 game below 500 right now at 22-23. So if we look at the standings in Major League Baseball as of today, we're going to see a shifting change take place a little bit. One of the tightest races in Major League Baseball right now is the American League East. The Tampa Bay Rays have a half a game lead over the New York Yankees. That is very, very tight in that race right now. Minnesota has a 4.5 game lead over Cleveland, and the Houston Astros have really stretched out their lead against the Seattle Mariners. I mean, it's not even a race now. It was, at one point, it was only a half a game separation between the two. I want to thank you for watching this edition, and you have a great day.